Being the last of 3 parts, this video shares what I consider the best training tactics for building muscle and staying clean. Based on the training chapters of my book OMAD Gains, the video examines the principles that entirely transformed my physique. The other parts. The first part summarized what I think are the best dietary tactics to stay lean and muscular, and the second discussed the often misunderstood role of willpower. Disclaimer. This content's purpose isn't to argue with others. Ideally, you approach things like a scientist by testing and comparing your empirical results. You also consider body recomposition as impacting your whole life. Understanding it can cause plenty of misery, but also improve your entire being, and that wholly depends on how you approach it. Summing it up. Everything I do at the gym is to achieve what Frank Zane defines as selective growth, and to do this I employ what for convenience my OMAD Gains calls reverse or reversed volume training. Improving proportions and symmetry, the latter is based on the principles of pre-exhaustion, muscle priority, and German overload. Pre-exhaustion. Also called pre-fatiguing, pre-exhaustion is reversed volume training in and of itself, as it places an isolation movement before multi-joint or compound ones. Referred to as double pre-exhaustion, that can be done with 2 exercises. I prefer the term advanced pre-exhaustion to define putting all isolation movements before the compound ones. What that does is letting me control my efforts and not merely grow in size. Also, to readily incorporate the muscle priority principle. Muscle priority. This means starting with the group's weakest area, keeping the most volume on it, and then progressing with the next in that order. I do this until getting to the best developed, which depending on the case I touch slightly, train less frequently, or do not bother with at all, like front delts, upper back and outer quads. Not much difference. Something I understood the hard way is that merely growing in size doesn't create as much difference as improving your weakest muscles. You only get bigger. At the same time, your mismatching proportions either stay the same or become more apparent due to bigger size. 2-stage training. Following OMAD Gains, my workouts are split into 2 stages. Purely isolation, the first is the bulk of the session. It gives it a direction based on the weakest areas of the muscle I train. It also works each segment separately. Being about 1/4, the second stage brings everything together, exercising the entire group with compound movements. The mirror. Only trusting the mirror, I really don't care about the scale, the body fat caliper, and whether Joe Schmo pushes heavier weights. Using the priority principle, I dedicate one period to certain areas while emphasizing others for another. I do this until I see the desired tangible results in the mirror, and that doesn't always happen in 6, 8 or 12 weeks as marketed by gurus and influencers. Safety and flexibility. Emphasizing the less developed areas means doing less for the others. It is about selective growth, not abusing my body and growing random muscles I actually don't want to develop. Once I finish with the isolation, I move to the compound exercises. The pre-exhaustion diminishes the ability to use a lot of weight, so besides improving muscle maturity, such a method eliminates the chances of snapping something by lifting heavy on the riskier exercises. Less becomes more. Making less more, this quote-unquote advanced pre-exhaustion allows continuously shocking the muscle without increasing the weight on the compound movements, a phenomenon conventional wisdom regards as impossible. It also gives me more options to tweak and fine-tune my training. Depending on the movements I perform before them, the compound exercises target my muscles differently, which is crucial for the selective growth, and also implies multiplying the options you have with the available equipment. No matter how scarce or abundant that is, I can always get more out of it with pre-exhaustion, and the priority principle helps me do that most constructively. The role of resistance. A truth some people have difficulty comprehending is that unlike in power and weightlifting and perhaps CrossFit, in bodybuilding the weight is but a necessary tool and not the goal, and the goal is to keep the targeted area under constant tension. Time under tension. This, however, doesn't make the weight or the resistance less essential. To tax your muscles, you need resistance to work against, and adjusting that is one of the keys to achieving optimal periods of time under tension. As you likely know, the contraction has 3 phases: concentric, isometric, and eccentric. Usually, time under tension is explained as the combined duration of all 3. Rather than perceiving my sets as numbers of reps, I aim to merge those into extended periods of time under tension, and that doesn't imply aiming to go fast, losing form or introducing swinging. It means keeping the tempo nice and steady, as if pumping a car. The more there is, the more blood and nutrients I drag into the area. Also, the more defined and leaner my look, as I eat the way I described in part 1. Although a lot of people will disagree, Serge Nubret and Jason Funk would agree that real growth occurs when sustaining the pump, throwing all those nutrients into the cells, and my results resonate with that 100%. German overload. Lastly, I use the German overload principle. Long ago, German scientists conducted an experiment with both humans and rats, splitting them into two groups. The first group trained like sprinters, doing plenty of work for short periods. The second performed the same amount of work but for longer, similar to long-distance runners. Initially, no dietary intervention was made. Then scientists increased the protein intake of both groups. What was found is that the humans and mice doing the short burst training actually built muscle, whereas those with the extended sessions only got skinnier and suffered a hormonal drop. Popularized by Vince Gironda, that keeps my training with maximum intensity. I also incorporate what the Iron Guru called compound training, which does several movements back to back. Besides saving time, this also forces my body to mobilize exceedingly more stored energy, and the reason is what's known as excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or EPOC. Also called the Afterburn effect, this is elevated oxygen consumption after the training is finished. Unlike resting for 2 to 3 minutes to lift maximally heavy, high intensity, high volume training creates a great oxygen demand which might extend up to 48 hours after the workout, according to some studies. As mentioned, the body mobilizes more energy, which comes exclusively from its reserves as I'm doing OMAD, and that basically sums up how I continue improving my physique without cardio, tracking, heavy lifting, etc. But all this is just my perspective, which may or may not resonate with you. Whatever the case, I'll be happy if you let me know your take on the topic. Feel free to share that, such as your personal experiences with these or other training methods. Also, your suggestions for future videos on this channel. Otherwise, like this video if you think it provides value. Check my other works if you're into tech and product reviews and magic with a K, and also my coaching services by DMing me on Instagram. Know my music and articles are on Spotify and Medium, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for your time.